Hi, I'm Michelle Gussow. Today I'm chatting with actor Lec Zorn. How are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's nice to have you here. Actually, I guess calling you just an actor is rather minimalistic, because you're all over the place. And when I first met you, you were a prog rocker? Was that it?
Sort of, yeah. I started off in music for many years before I went into film. I come from a long line of musicians, starting with my mother, who was a piano teacher and a church organist, as well as a choir director for many years. And then her mother was a piano teacher as well, and my grandmother on my dad's side was a church organist. So I just really, there was never a time in my life when I wasn't exposed to music. It was classical music early on, and then in the early 80s I discovered pop and rock music and ran with that for a long time until, I discovered, about 10 years ago that film was an outlet through which I could better express myself.
With the music, you had a great CD out, the Lec Zorn Project. Now, was that something that started back when you were in high school or younger, or when did that come along?
It didn't go quite that far back, I started making the album all the way back in 1995, and at that time, it was in the dark days of the grunge era, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and those bands, and I was really missing the 80s sound of bands like Journey, Survivor, Kansas,
right.
Night Ranger, Styx, Boston, a lot of the classic stuff that I grew up loving, and that all of a sudden, was being shunned by radio other than classic rock stations, and I really missed that sound, and so I wanted to hold to it. So I decided I wanted to make an album in that sound, and I worked on it a little at a time over the next 12 years until I finally got it out, and then I planned to make another one, and I still might at some point, but it's just hard to find time with all the film stuff I'm involved in right now.
What made you take that leap from music to film specifically?
Well, to try to condense it down without watering it down. My brother Robert McAtee has been a Hollywood actor for 20 years now, and basically, I knew he'd been acting. I saw a couple of clips of stuff he'd done. I thought it was good, but it didn't strike me initially something that I wanted to do myself. But then, in late summer, early autumn of 2005, two things happened a few weeks apart that really influenced me. Number one is I was at a public library here in Indianapolis, and my wife Sharita, or Sherry as people call her, she's of Indian descent, and she and her mother would always go to the library and borrow these Indian or Bollywood movies, which I've never been able to stand for the most part. So anyway, but I was looking in the foreign section there, which mostly was comprised of Indian movies, but I saw this movie from Iceland called Noi, which I'd never heard of, and just I was fascinated by the idea of a movie from Iceland, especially because I'm fascinated with isolated culture. So I got the movie and I was blown away by it. And prior to that, I knew there was a film scene outside of Hollywood, outside of the major Hollywood studios, but I knew little about it. And I was really amazed by the ingenuity of this low-budget film, which I think is just supremely written and acted. It's just a wonderful movie that I recommend very highly. And then a few weeks after that, my brother and his then girlfriend Molly Leland sent me a screenplay of a film called Trail of Crumbs they were working on, and I read the whole thing and I just loved it. And then that's when I realized, I want to write films, and then that eventually evolved into me acting.
So I know the answer to this, but this is for everybody else. What was your first acting role, and what was your first speaking role?
Well, I actually, when my brother and there's two answers to that actually. When my brother and his girlfriend got around to making their movie Trail of Crumbs, they actually came out to Kentucky to make part of it, and I went down to Louisville, and I was in a scene which ended up getting cut in a non-speaking role, and then I remember, I'd known you casually for about 10 years, since we met at that Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 concert back I remember the date, May 16th, 1997, because it was the day before my niece's due date.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
So, and she actually was 2 days late, it turned out. But anyway, I don't remember what the occasion was, but I remember running into you at the Bean Cup, where I was playing a lot of gigs in the Chris Sullivan band as his bass guitarist. And we got to talking, and you said you were working in film, and I had been wanting to get involved in film, so we started, talking more often. And then I knew you were working on that film Soldier Song, and
Right.
so, I wanted to be involved in some way, and, you brought me up onto the set, first as a driver, and then, you were going to give me a non-speaking role, and then I use this as an example, because a lot of, young people going into acting need to know this. If you get offered a non-speaking role, even as an extra, take it, because you never know where it could lead.
Right.
And it was the first of several times in my career when I ended up getting a bigger role because somebody didn't show up, or because of a rewrite.
well-
In your case, it was because somebody didn't show up.
Oh, absolutely. And we did a rewrite to make it work, because we
Yeah.
actually, at that particular one, we had 2 people who
Yeah.
didn't show up.
Yeah.
No, so that first time on the set,
Mm-hmm.
were you like kind of nervous?
No, I
or-
wasn't. I just felt really at home, and I remember that the first, I was up there twice on the set, there in Logansport, which is, for those who don't know, about an hour north of here, where Soldier Song was filmed, and I remember just really observing a lot and getting, talking to people on set, getting to know people, and I don't think most of the people there are working in film anymore, but I still remember, it very vividly. And then I remember the second time up there, when 20 minutes before the scene went on, you asked me if I would do a speaking part, and I was like ready to jump on it, and even though you told me all I had to do was be passable, and so I just went out there and I gave it my best shot, and I had 3 small speaking lines, and nobody seemed to be snickering, and
Right.
thinking, oh, that guy's terrible. So, that gave me the confidence that I could do it, and I was, I think I would have had a successful acting career regardless, but I think that really was important to me, because that's when I realized without a doubt that I was capable of doing it, because I wasn't sure before. And so it's an example to always put yourself in position, and always put yourself in position to be called upon, and you can't do that if you're not on the set. So, don't think you're too good for anything. Just seize every opportunity, even if it's just being an extra, because you never know where it'll lead. Not only with, gaining knowledge and experience, or possibly getting bigger roles if somebody doesn't show up or there's a remake, but also meeting people in the industry, which is very important. Building up a network of contacts.
Now, how was it that you got into doing the sports announcing? Because right now, a lot of people, again, don't know this, you are the voice of Cascade High School.
Yeah, I've been commentating high school sports for 7 years now, and I'd been a sports fanatic since I was 7 years old. Baseball, football, basketball, just going around that circle many times, and for 41 years now. And I always thought I was capable of being a sports commentator. And then about 8 years ago, I was on Craigslist. I think I was looking for film jobs, but I saw an advertisement for looking for sports commentators for a guy named Rob Kindle out in Brownsburg, who runs a company called Audio Sports Online that has contracts with client schools, mainly in Indiana, but also all over America. And, so anyway, I emailed him a few times for about a year, and then, I told him I believed I was capable of doing it. And finally, one time, he had an opening for week 2 of the 2012 season. He had me commentate Brownsburg at Noblesville, and I did it, and I've been with him ever since. So, and, then doing basketball, and then once in a great while baseball and softball as well. And now the last 3 years I've settled in, as the voice of Cascade, which is a high school in a small town called Clayton, which is 15 miles west of Indianapolis, and feel very much at home there, and I've sort of become a local celebrity. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun, and I hope to stay there for a long time.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention project of yours, Super Deep Movie Analysis, which I've done a whole series of them
Yeah.
alongside you. This is something I always say when the analysis of the film is longer than the film itself. That is a super deep movie analysis.
It is, yes, and yeah, that was something I've been doing for 4 years now, and the last couple of years the production has really slowed down, just because I haven't had time. But basically, I've always been a very analytical person by nature, and and being involved in film has made me even more analytical of films. 100% of the people I've talked to about this who work in film have agreed with me that once you work in film, you never watch films the same way again. And
right.
so, that's made me extremely analytical when it comes to films. So yeah, I pick favorite movies of mine and just pick them apart. And you've been my guest, especially on the Rocky Creed series. We've done all those movies. We haven't done Creed 2 yet, but we've done everything prior to that, and a couple of others. And then my former classmate Robert Landrum joined me for The Shining, and then for Blue Chips, which is a college basketball drama. And then I've done quite a few myself. And so yeah, I hope to do more frequent episodes over the years, but that's something I plan to always continue doing. And I found that there are some fans of these movies that I review who really appreciate the episodes, and so
yeah, it's probably a lot of fun because it's something different out there for the films, and
it is, yeah.
Looking at it that way,
it is, and one of the best compliments that I've ever gotten is I actually found a guy on Facebook who's a supporting actor in one of my favorite movies of all time, the fairly obscure 1985 comedy drama Heaven Help Us. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's sometimes called the Animal House of Catholic High Schools, but I think that's selling it short because Animal House was strictly a comedy. Heaven Help Us is a comedy drama that has some very serious moments as well. But anyway, there's an actor in the film named Malcolm Danare who sort of got typecast in the 80s as the fat intellectual nerd in a series of teen movies. And now is primarily a voice actor, which I do a lot of as well. But anyway, I found him on Facebook, and I sent him the link to the episode, and he watched it, and he told me that he loved my analysis of it, so I really appreciated that.
Yeah. So over the years, I was going to say, if you had to pick one role that you've played, movies, what would be that standout role for you? Something that you were just the most proud of, or if somebody said, I want to watch you in one thing, what would that thing be?
I'll tell you, this is I have a very unusual answer to that, and I'm glad you asked the question because it's really interesting for me as an actor. Sometimes I don't think a lot about a performance that I've done, and then I swatch it and I'm really impressed with it. Mm-hmm. And then vice versa. There are times when I give a performance and looking back, it's not as good as I thought it was, or maybe I think, gee, I wish the director had used a different take because I know I did a better, one of my other takes was better. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, there was a film called Sons of Erebus. It was a student film made by a guy named Austin Kinder, I believe his name was, down at Spalding University in Louisville. And it was made on 2 consecutive Saturday afternoons. It was just it's a 12-minute film, and about 10 minutes of it is just me having a one-on-one conversation with an actor who's played by a guy named Brian Wine. And it's like basically, I'm a teacher, and then he's this, I guess, government agent type who's asking me all these intimidating questions. And I enjoyed making it, but I thought the film was good. I didn't think it was going to be anything extraordinary. But then when I watched the film, I was just really knocked over by it. I was like, wow, this is great, And the chemistry that Brian Wine and I had with each other, I thought was just fabulous. And it's, I really got into it and really became absorbed in the role, and I didn't realize that until I saw the performance. And I give not only the director Austin Kinder but also Brian Wine a lot of credit for that because they really brought out the best in me, because Brian and I just played off each other so well. And it's really, I think people give their best performances when they you just get lost in it, and where it all becomes like almost like reality to them, and it just, without me realizing it had happened in that film, I had to see the final product to really, get a to appreciate that. But yeah, that's my favorite personal performance so far, and I enjoy sharing it with others.
Yeah. Well, there's no question in talking to you and all the time I've known you, whether it's the music or the acting, the voiceover, you absolutely just love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious that that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody who may be watching and wondering how important it really is in that to really love it,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say?
What's your question now? I want to make sure I understand what you're looking for.
Well, if somebody's saying it, how important is it that you really, really love acting, that you really, really love music when you're getting involved in that?
Oh, yeah.
Because we have people, I say all the time, get involved in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I do it because I love doing it. I've always been a very expressive person, and I found through music that I could express myself through that, and then I found I can, express myself even more effectively, I think, through acting, and as well as through screenwriting, which I tried to do as well. But acting, is just such, a great, a powerful outlet, and I think that, the amount of natural ability that people have varies, but I think there is a place in the film industry for anybody who has the passion for it and wants to do it and works hard at it. Extremely few of us ever come anything close to rich and famous, but a long, productive, and fulfilling career is available to anybody who works hard at it. If you're willing to show up and do your job and build a wide network of industry contacts and have a good attitude and,
Right.
just give it your best shot every time, you can find success. And, that doesn't mean you're going to make a lot of money, but it means you can get a lot of work over your whole life, and have a great time doing it.
So that's, to me, why I say
Yeah.
it's really important to love what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because you're in it for the passion. It's not really going to be lucrative for everybody, but
Yeah.
everybody can. I think if they work really hard, or there's opportunities now that weren't available even like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, the film industry, I was 38 when I did that role in Soldier Song, which was, let's see, this is May 3rd, 2019. That role I did was June 13th of 2009, so just about 6 weeks shy of 10 years.
Right.
And, you didn't realize what a monster you were creating.
No, not at all.
So, yeah, I'm still going strong, and I've always said I wish I'd started long before 38, but at the same time, there really weren't a lot of film opportunities, outside of Hollywood at that time, and now there's tons of them with, because it's a lot cheaper to make films. Heck, you have people making films on their phones now, and then you've got all kinds of other avenues to distribute films that didn't exist, even 10 or 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. So, for anybody watching too who'd like to get into any of these things, one really quick piece of advice for anybody interested.
Well, first of all, right now the bulk of casting seems to be taking place on Facebook. It's been that way for about 6 or 7 years now. I don't know what it'll be like in 5 or 10 years. Right now, Facebook seems to be where most casting is done. But yeah, go on there, find some, film groups in your region. Look for opportunities, even if it's just being an extra. Perform a lot of auditions, get to know a lot of people, work hard on your acting every day. What I do is I pick some of my favorite scenes, and act them out, and and try to build some range. Try to work on a wide variety of styles and emotions, and learn how to pour yourself into it. One thing I always say: probably every emotion you're ever going to be called upon to display in film is an emotion you've experienced in real life. So you just have to figure out to bring that emotion up at the right time, and that's a big part of it.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time on the couch.